Hello everyone, today I want to talk about the new upcoming character Cyno and hopefully help you figure out if he fits your playstyle and team composition, so ultimately if this character is worth your wishes. First I will go over the skill kit and talk about some build ideas, and in the later half I get into synergies with other characters and team compositions. For this character, we don't care about his normal attacks at all because his elemental burst skill grants him an entirely new set of Electra-infused normal attacks with the usual resistance to interruption, and he also gets a 100 elemental mastery self buff. And whenever you use his elemental skill while the burst skill is active, you also extend the duration of the elemental burst skill. And the elemental skill just does some instant electro damage. As far as passive skills, the first one just grants him extra rewards for Sumeru expeditions. The second one is when his burst skill is active, he enters a special state periodically, which opens a window for your elemental skill to do additional damage. And the last passive skill is when his burst skill is active, the extra damage from the last passive skill we just talked about and the damage of Cyno's normal attacks is increased based off elemental mastery. Cyno kind of reminds me of Arataki Ito, so if you like him, you will probably love this character. You pretty much only do damage when your burst skill is up, and then you do some timed elemental skills in between normal attacks. It's probably gonna be very fun and engaging gameplay. As for the build, a standard main DPS build with a little bit of elemental mastery, but don't go too crazy just because he has elemental mastery scaling. Don't sacrifice too much crit rate or crit damage for it, it's not worth it. As for weapons and artifacts, it's gonna be a little rough because Cyno's elemental burst skill is a little expensive, and it also has its own multipliers. You don't need to level the actual normal attack on Cyno at all. But it doesn't say it's considered elemental burst damage similar to Raiden, so for now I assume the catch plus the emblem set is not the way to go on Cyno. Well, good thing is we get an entirely new 4-star weapon next patch for the event, so that's covered. Just use that. It has attack and elemental mastery, which is exactly what you want for him. For artifacts, since we don't want the emblem set, presumably, we go with the 4-piece Thundering Fury set. The elemental reaction damage is really nice because you definitely want to trigger aggravate with them, and the elemental skill cooldown reduction might be really good because you can quite literally spam it with it. As for team composition, Cyno is an attack scaling main DPS who wants to have a lot of field time, so he gains a lot of benefit from a character like Bennett. You can do pretty similar teams like you would do with Raiden, for example. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the national team. Even after Sumeru's release, I still consider it really strong. And instead of Jingshu, you can obviously play Yelan, and it's even better. And aside from this, you obviously now have the option to play the Quick and Aggravate team with a Dendro sub-DPS like Collet or the Traveler, and finish it up with an Anemo character to lower the Electro resistance, and in case of Kazuo also increase the Electro damage, or in case of Sukrose increase the Elemental Mastery, which is especially great for Cyno because he has Elemental Mastery scaling. I don't like the C6 Sarah teams if you're asking about that, because Cyno's elemental burst skill is a lot longer than Raiden, so I assume you would lose a lot of value from the very short buff. Instead of Anemo characters, you can play other utility characters, for example Yunjin for increased normal attack damage, or kind of the same thing applies to Candace. She increases elemental normal attack damage, which obviously applies to Cyno with his Electro-infused normal attacks. And you also get a Hydro sub DPS, so you can trigger some Hyper Bloom reactions. Same thing applies to just a regular Hydro sub DPS. You can obviously just pick Yelan in this spot. And the last thing I want to mention is, of course, Albedo has an elemental mastery buff, and you can just replace Bennett with Zhongli for the Geo Resonance and the Electro Resistance threat. I think this is also really good, and it is just an aggravate team with Geo Resonance. One thing I forgot to mention is, if you have Constellation 2 Jean, she provides attack speed to characters standing inside her elemental burst skill, which is especially good for characters who do a lot of normal attacks like Cyno. So you can run a team like this, of course still the Electro plus Dendro elemental reaction, Jean as your healer with the Viridescent set, and another utility character like Candace or Yunjin, or just a Hydro sub DPS character for the Hyper Bloom reaction. Alright, we made it to the end. I hope this was somewhat helpful. Cyno seems really fun to play. I hope his energy generation isn't terrible. That would kind of ruin it for me. I get him and try him out, so stay tuned for that. Until then, have fun and bye bye.